Do you want to see something sort of terrifying and very Russian? This is a Russian-made nuclear-powered monster ship, essentially. You know monster trucks? This is monster ship. The whole purpose of this ship is to crush stuff in its path. Its name translates in English to 50 years of victory, a reference to Russia's great military triumphs over the decades. Its entire purpose in life is to destroy everything in its path, specifically to destroy ice in its path. Check this out.
The ship is breaking its way through the ice. It's absolutely remarkable. The ice here is probably 1.5 meters to 2 meters thick. That's 6, maybe 7 feet thick. And it's just cutting its way through at the moment. There's a strong wind and it's biting cold with the huge chunks of ice. But we're now moving through the hard pack ice at around 15 or 16 knots.
Russia's nuclear-powered icebreaker ships are pretty legendary. The U.S. Coast Guard does have a small fleet of icebreaker vessels. I think we have 2. But what we have is really nothing compared to what Russia has. These particular icebreakers, though, are neither Russian nor American. They are Finnish. They're from Finland, and these ones are used primarily to escort other ships through the Baltic Sea. But these icebreakers from Finland are also available for rent. Having a party anytime soon? These specific Finnish icebreakers have recently been rented to an international company that currently is in the market for icebreaking services in the northern climes of the Earth. That would be Shell Oil. Shell Oil has contracted out these 2 icebreakers from Finland to help them start drilling the Arctic. And if you are already sensing how this story ends, that's because you know how things tend to go for Shell in the Arctic. This is crunch time for them right now in terms of their plans to drill for oil up there. I mean, nature waits for no man, right? They don't have a long season in which they can be up there. They would like to start their Arctic drilling this month. Part of the holdup so far, though, has been getting all of their ships into place, like the Finnish icebreaking ships. But another part of the holdup has been getting the final permission to drill, and that has been slow going, mainly because of how badly Shell keeps botching things in the Arctic. In 2012, the U.S. government gave Shell this historic go-ahead to start doing exploratory drilling in the Arctic. It went very badly. This is Shell's drilling rig, the Noble Discoverer, after it ran aground in Alaska's Aleutian Islands. The ship started drifting out of control toward the shore, and then it crashed into the islands. A few months later, that same ship briefly caught fire while in port after it had some sort of explosion on board. A few months after that, the U.S. Coast Guard boarded the ship and then detained it in port after they turned up more than a dozen potential safety violations, which ultimately led to 8 felony convictions being handed down by the U.S. Justice Department. That was just one of the 2 rigs that Shell sent to drill the Arctic in 2012. This was the other one, a drilling rig called the Kulik, which crashed into an island in Alaska after breaking free from its tow line. That's how it went for Shell their first time around. It's just a comedy of errors, including one of their critical pieces of safety equipment getting crushed like a beer can during a safety test. It was just a nightmare, and it was a nightmare of their own making. They were not up to the task. I mean, Shell said they were the best in the world at this. If anybody could be trusted to drill the Arctic for the first time ever, surely they would be the company to do it. And they got permission, and then promptly their equipment all melted down when they finally got the chance to drill. Well, 3 years later, Shell is trying again. But guess what has just happened? No, really, guess. Today we learned that one of those icebreakers, one of those Finnish icebreakers that Shell is renting from Finland, it has a giant hole in it. It's already been seriously damaged while on its way to Shell's drilling site in the Chukchi Sea. They haven't even started drilling yet, but the ship apparently already has a 3-foot-long hole in its hull, which was discovered by crew members when it left port in Alaska. It's not clear yet what ripped the hole in the hull, but depending on how significant the damage is and what it's going to take to repair this 3-foot-long hole, this could leave Shell to have to revise their drilling plans, which would require a whole new authorization to drill. Specifically because Shell has proved yet again how they really can't pull this off. I mean, there has been a huge determined activist effort to try to stop Shell from drilling the Arctic, right? The kayak protests in Seattle, individual activists boarding Shell's rigs bound for the Arctic. There's been a huge political fight to try to stop Shell from drilling the Arctic. And that's been fascinating to watch. But maybe the thing that ultimately stops Shell from drilling in the Arctic is that Shell can't actually figure out how to drill the Arctic. They can't keep their ships working. They can't operate their own equipment. They might just physically be incapable of doing what they are trying to do. And if they say they're the best in the world, maybe this just can't be done. Joining us now is Jennifer Delohy. She's an energy reporter for the Houston Chronicle. Ms. Delohy, it's nice to have you here. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let me ask you first if I'm saying Delohy right.
You are.
Oh, very good. Well, let's just cut it off here. We're done. Let me ask you on that high note. Let me ask you if we know anything about what caused the damage in this icebreaker. I think a reason we showed some of that macho Russian footage is because I think of icebreakers as fairly impenetrable macho vessels. It's hard to believe that this one's got a 3-foot-long hole in it without anybody knowing how it got there.
Right, and we still don't know exactly what happened to cause this. It's as you said, it's about a meter-long gash in the hull of the vessel. And it doesn't appear that it was caused by a grounding because the path that it took, the water was essentially deeper than the vessel's draft. But it could have been caused by scraping against another shallow water hazard that is undocumented in the area that hadn't been charted.
In terms of what this means for Shell's overall project here, obviously there's more than a couple dozen ships that are supposed to be involved in the drilling effort. Do you have any sense of what sort of the cutoff is in terms of whether or not this incident with the icebreaker is going to be an existential challenge for this overall project? Do we know sort of what would be a permissible amount of time for repairs that would still allow Shell to go forward with the plan?
Yeah, I think a lot depends on how significant the damage is and really how much repair work needs to be done. If it can be repaired on site, it can be done rather quickly, be ready to go again. That's obviously what Shell is hoping for. The question really is this vessel going to have to go to a dry dock and get significant repairs? And if that's the case, you're looking at, 2 weeks to get down to perhaps a port in Washington State to do the work, the repair time, and then coming back. That's a significant time. And as you noted, it's crunch time for Shell. They've got basically 3 months to operate in these waters. So they may be looking at trying to get a new vessel if, again, the Fennica is damaged so much that it needs dry dock repairs.
If they get a new vessel, if they have to do that, would they then need a new set of permissions in order to go ahead?
So what's interesting is we're in pretty uncharted territory here. Most operations in the Gulf of Mexico don't have quite the large fleet that Shell is having to bring to the Arctic and don't deal with this kind of challenge. So what you have here is Shell has already gotten its exploration plan approved by the Interior Department, but that exploration plan specifically uncharted territory here. Most operations in the Gulf of Mexico don't have quite the large fleet that Shell is having to bring to the Arctic and don't deal with this kind of challenge. So what you have here is Shell has already gotten its exploration plan approved by the Interior Department, but that exploration plan specifically outlines what ships are going to be used in all cases, including in emergencies. And the Fennica is a part of that exploration plan. So if the Fennica is sidelined, Shell might have to get the Interior Department's approval for any substantial or significant departure from that exploration plan. That could include a new vessel. And regulators have also indicated that the emergency equipment that is on the Fennica will have to be in the area to be used in case of an emergency. So they're going to be looking for that change no matter what.
Jennifer Delohy, energy reporter for the Houston Chronicle. This is going to be fascinating to watch. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but Shell just seems very star-crossed in these efforts. Thanks for helping us understand tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.